Champaign County have a unique hobby they've been able to turn into a job, modifying cars that haven't been made for decades. It's an MGB, a British car that was made until the 80s. Now Pete Mantell has found a way to take the British model and put an American engine in it, making it faster and more of a modern day sports car. He grew up in the UK and grew up around MGCs, so he says it's only natural for him to work on them, figuring out a way to flip the engines and sharing it with the rest of the world. We'll be sharing the story of how Mantell Motorsports got started, and here's some of the history behind the model later on over on WCIX.
Let's stop forecast. Starting off, check that out. In the 80s this morning for those of the kids who have to head to school, that is still. And then, of course, as they're heading home, it's going to be a lot hotter. As we top off in the mid-90s, still an abundant amount of sunshine out there. High humidity. It's going to be sticky and almost downright miserable. Things starting to change, though. During the latter part of the weekend and into next work week, there's going to be much more of a change on the way. If you're not at 80, then you're probably just around the upper 70s, just under that mark at 78 in Springfield, same in Champaign and in Effingham. 80s, though, around for those of us in Chicago, Peru, heading into St. Louis, and right now in Davenport. Satellite and radar picture, all the rain well north of us. No worries about any of that, maybe even impacting our northern communities like it did yesterday into Livingston, Ford, and Iroquois County. But it will stay away. We'll see very few in terms of clouds. We'll notice more of the clear sky for tonight, just like we did last night. And it looks like we're going to be noticing more of that warm and very muggy air mass again, too, as we start off tomorrow morning. For that reason, we still have this excessive heat warning that's going to be out for today and tomorrow, too. Those of us closer to I-70 might notice it for one more day as we're starting to see more of a transition taking place heading to Sunday as the front will move through the region, bring us some storm chances, and eventually so much cooler weather by the beginning of next work week. We'll show you how much cooler coming up and a look at your 7-day forecast in just about 5 minutes. Christy?
Thanks, Adam. After about 8 hours of deliberation, Brent Christensen's fate was decided. Christensen will spend the rest of his life in prison. It's a decision that's been years in the making. He kidnapped and killed U of I scholar Yingying Zhang 2 years ago. Now a jury has decided not to give him the death penalty. Jurors took about a day and a half to make their choice, and they still couldn't all agree. So that means he gets life in prison by default. That's a blow to federal prosecutors who say the death penalty was the only way for Yingying Zhang to get justice. When the verdict was delivered, it was hard to see much emotion on Christensen's face, but he was seen hugging members of his defense team. Zhang's family was even more difficult to read. They barely moved when it was read. But later, we watched her mother get emotional during a news conference. Zhang's family pleaded for Christensen to reveal where their daughter's body is. Here's their representative.
If you have any humanity left in your soul, please help end our torment. Please let us bring Yingying home.
Christensen was also sentenced to 5 years for lying to the FBI and fined $250,000 for each of the 3 counts. The judge says if he ever happened to come into possession of money, it would go where it rightfully belongs. We have new details on a double shooting in Taylorville. The Christian County State's attorney filed charges against the suspected shooter. 40-year-old Nathan Howell is charged with attempted murder and aggravated discharge of a firearm. One victim is in critical condition. The other is out of the hospital. Howell was taken into custody immediately after the shooting. Police in Mississippi have arrested a man suspected of robbing a bank in Urbana. 22-year-old Robert Mullins from Champaign is behind bars in Gulfport, Mississippi. Police say he's responsible for holding up the Heartland Bank and Trust in April. U.S. Marshals served the arrest warrant. Mullins is being held pending extradition. New this morning, a Decatur man was given 1 year of probation after police say he burned a boy with a cigarette lighter. Jonathan Walker pleaded guilty to a battery charge as part of a plea deal. Our partners at the Herald and Review report that Walker got angry with his girlfriend's 9-year-old son after he accidentally burned his 2-year-old son with a lighter. Police say as punishment, Walker whipped the boy with a belt and burned him with the end of the cigarette lighter. In addition to probation, Walker must complete anger management classes. A new law is impacting gun owners across the state. Now, one group is taking legal action. The Illinois State Rifle Association filed a lawsuit to challenge a law. It requires gun dealers to be licensed by the state. The certification fee can range anywhere from $300 to $1,500, depending on whether there's a retail location. One gun store owner says it's not just about the fee. He says other requirements passed this year are costing businesses.
The loss of business. I know several of friends in other parts of the states are just closing up their doors because, some of the things they wanted us to do was, a video surveillance system, an alarm system.
It was monetary.
Senator Don Harmon is a sponsor of the bill. He says he knows other states that have enacted similar laws to this one and have seen a reduction in guns used in crimes. The now former CEO of the Land of Lincoln Goodwill is out of a job. Sharon Durbin submitted her resignation to the board of directors. She shocked and offended many in Central Illinois when she said tasks completed by employees with disabilities were not really a job. Earlier in the week, Durbin said a dozen workers with disabilities would not be paid before reversing the decision on Wednesday after backlash from the community, state lawmakers, and 2 presidential candidates. New this morning, the Grotto and Danville will hold their Thunder on the Vermilion boat races this weekend. It kicks off today with a practice run, and the races are tomorrow and Sunday. Races start at 10 o'clock. Admission is $5. They'll have seating on the bleachers and underneath the patio. There will also be live music all weekend, as well as food and drinks for sale. I'm going to say that's on the patio, not under it. That might be hard to do. That will wrap up the morning show on WCIA. But coming up, when we make the switch to WCIX for the 7 and 8 o'clock hours of the morning show, a Disney remake is on area screens this week. Film critic Pam Powell is stopping by to tell us about Lion King coming up in Friday Flicks. But before we get to that, let's get a check of our forecast with Adam.
So don't forget that excessive heat warning is still in effect today, tomorrow, and then for those of us farther to the south, closer to I-70 on Sunday. And Sunday will be the transition day for many of us, as we'll have a chance of showers and storms move through with a cold front that brings highs back down around the 90-degree mark, but then much cooler to start off next work week. And really throughout a lot of next work week, but highs around the low to mid-80s. Just a few more days. Of course, keep yourself safe here during this heat, and especially if you're going to be out there for our town, Sydney, later on this afternoon and this evening. Make sure to drink plenty of water and use a lot of sunscreen too.
Yes, and don't overexert yourself.